Okay, Ashin, it's lovely to catch up with you again. Thanks for doing this. This is actually the second time we're recording it, isn't it? The first time you were traveling, there was lots of background noise, and I just thought I really want to allow people to fully hear your message of recovery, where you were, what you've been through, and where you are now. So thank you so much once again for joining us to do this.
No problem at all. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties, so and like you said, I'd like to get the word out there to people who are suffering with this, to men. But there is help, and you can recover.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I've got your notes here, so I'm going to rustle through those. So there might be a little bit of background noise.
Hmm.
Now, we first met pretty much a year ago. You filled out the forms back in March of 2024, but your your situation had preceded that, hadn't it? So give us a little bit of background about the onset of your symptoms, what was going on for you. Um, yeah, so give us the symptoms and what was going on for you at the time. We'll then look at medical interventions, etc.
So I had gone on a night out about, I think, about 5, 6 years ago when it all initially started. A lot of, admittedly, a lot of drinking. And I had basically what the doctor told me is I contracted like a urinary tract infection. So I went to the doctor. They said, "Oh, you have a urinary tract infection. Take these antibiotics." Took the antibiotics, and the symptoms did not go away. And the symptoms kind of manifested into other areas, should I say. I started to have pain in the prostate region, pain during urination, often having urgency, needing to go to pee suddenly during the night a lot. Um, and then, of course, these symptoms changed over the next 2, 3 years or so. They kind of changed into hard flaccid and numbness, all these varying other degrees of pain and numbness that I had, yeah, over the next 2 years or so.
Thank you, Russian. It's that progression from that initial infection some 5 years or so ago, and how that really did ramp up. Now, you were given multiple courses of antibiotics, which didn't help. Further stress then made the uh, pelvic pain spread to other areas. 2 years later, after all the antibiotics, you were given a diagnosis of CPPS in the UK. Um, and you started doing a bit more of your own investigation to find out what was going on, more intensive stretching. You found the online DCT program, that's the dynamic contraction technique. And actually, within that time, symptoms had changed for you, and you found a bit of relief after doing the DCT technique, didn't you?
Yeah, after doing it quite religiously, yeah, maybe probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of stretching every day,
Yeah.
morning and then in the evening. I did get some relief from the constant kind of pelvic pain, this kind of like constant tension under the pelvis.
Mm.
That did shift. Mm. But at the same time, then I started to get the more symptoms of like hard flaccid emerge
Mm.
at the same time. So it, like you said, it kind of moved some pain, but it just kind of transferred to another area. Um, Interestingly enough, but yeah.
Yeah, so there was a progression, a change in symptoms, and we'll look at the symptoms if we can, and then we'll take a slightly broader view at some of the other factors that were going on at the time, because it was a really challenging time for you as well.
Hmm.
Um, so you mentioned some numbness there. Are you able to open up a little bit more on some of the other symptoms you had around the hard flaccid or HF?
Yeah, I had the complete, like, often at times, numbness or a rubbery feeling, very difficult to urinate. You never felt like you were fully done urinating. During the night, I'd have to go 2 or 3 times every night, and you never fully feel like you're finished. And that obviously came with sexual problems, problems maintaining an erection, and anorgasmia, and often post-sex or orgasm as well. it would aggravate the symptoms. I'd have the pelvic pain would come back. I'd have really bad um, pain in the prostate area as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's a lot to have been through, excuse me, what you'd been through with the pain initially, and then for it to progress into the changes you're experiencing around your penis. And, as men, we can't, it's not the only thing that defines who we are. But it's a very important and very central part of our identity, and our how we relate sexually with others as well. And so, like for that to be going on and for all that uncertainty to be happening, that must have been an awful lot to contend with.
Yeah, it was yeah, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and I think a lot of that stress then feeds into the pain, and it becomes this vicious cycle of stress, pain, stress, pain. Why am I feeling stressed? Why am I experiencing this pain? Yeah, it's just this really horrible, vicious cycle.
Thank you. Now, COVID-19 hit and you had the symptoms, um, and were you in Germany at this point?
Yes,
Okay. So you'd moved to Germany and COVID, the lockdowns happened. You'd been through a painful breakup of a very long relationship, and then you were forced to spend a lot of time inside, um, I think by yourself, if I remember correctly.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, and then COVID during the lockdown, there was obviously a lot of everyone was kind of stressed. You couldn't, even in Germany, you couldn't go outside during certain hours. There was not much, no one, not much employment.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I just led to myself being very isolated. And I think during this time, the hard flaccid really got terribly bad. Um, and I mistakenly kind of sought my own answers online, looking on forums um, such as Reddit or Discord, looking for kind of answers because I couldn't really understand at that point what hard flaccid was. I didn't understand that it was kind of an umbrella term of um, chronic pelvic pain. I didn't know how to deal with it, or I was just looking for answers, really.
Yeah, that's it. And we'll go anywhere. And particularly during that period of time, it was the getting an appointment with someone, even a telephone or video consultation, was just incredibly difficult to navigate over here in the UK. I had, patients from all over the world during lockdowns, and the sentiments were echoed pretty much in every continent and every country I had my patients in. It was a really difficult and tough situation. So, of course, you're going to turn to the internet, right? It's readily available. It's right there, and Reddit
Hmm.
and Discord, as you mentioned, are a couple of channels that are information's readily available, and there's lots of other people with experience on there of what they're going through.
Hmm. Yeah, like you said, I couldn't find some appointments, or some you do go to. Like I would go to a urologist. They would just say you have an infection. They want to give you another antibiotic. That unfortunately doesn't work because you don't have an infection there. Um, so many other doctors I'd go to, while some were sympathetic, some thought, it's all in your head,
Mm.
um, that it doesn't exist. And also, yeah, it was just very hard to go to a healthcare professional and say, I have this XY symptoms. How do I fix them? It's really hard.
And it's not a very well understood condition at all, in terms of the research that's coming out medically at the moment. Even those research papers are relying and referencing on things like Reddit. So there is no money in researching HF. Um, there's interest in researching it and finding out a little bit more about it, but there's no funding behind it. So it's limping along. I mean that, and even that's being that's being kind to say the least.
Exactly.
Now, when we met and we started working together, we spoke about the trauma that you'd been through, with the breakup, with the symptoms, with the isolation, with all of this, and we'll come on to what we did very shortly. But my approach was looking beyond the pelvic floor. Much of the approaches and techniques for dealing with HF and pelvic pain are about focusing in on the pelvic floor. You saw Gerard Green, who's a male physio, pelvic pain physio based here in the UK. He assessed you and concluded that you had an extremely tight pelvic floor. Did some internal work with a TheraWand, and you got relief from the symptoms for a couple of days, didn't you?
Yeah, I got great relief, like as if basically no symptoms, albeit temporarily. Um, for 24 hours, I had no symptoms, and then I'd wake up the next day and bang, all the symptoms were back. So I was kind of left back at square one, a bit confused again, which is when I went on searched online and I found your practice, and we scheduled an appointment then.
No, we've never met face to face. We've done everything virtually through Zoom, which we're recording this on as well. But we first had a conversation at the end of March, and then we started in earnest in April time of last year. And my approach was about looking beyond just the pelvic floor, considering it as part of this whole process, but looking beyond the pelvic floor, looking at the whole nervous system, in fact, the whole of your system, as being particularly wound up and stuck in this program. So my objective to begin with was to help you to calm things down and create the right environment for change. Um, we looked at breathing techniques, we gave you some movements and some yoga nidra, some abdominal massage, and it was about just building a bit of a foundation for you, starting to give you a sense of control over your symptoms again. So how did you find the self-care techniques and how easy was that to implement for yourself?
Well, first, yeah, you gave me the some kind of like light stretching to do, which was similar actually to the some of the movements I had in the DCT course.
Hmm.
So they were quite easy to me. Obviously, I found them a little bit relaxing, but ultimately for me, it was what you gave me instead was the breathing techniques that did, I think, all of the work. Just truly allowing myself to kind of, as you would say, let go, learning just how to breathe and to not focus, to learn to just truly relax and not focus on the pain you're experiencing in the pelvis or the tension. And obviously, it wasn't overnight. It was months and months of every day doing the breathing techniques. But slowly, the pelvic floor has relaxed, and I'm pretty good these days now.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear. The breathing technique to begin with was breathing in for 4 seconds and out for 6 seconds, deeper abdominal breathing. But I wanted you to do it everywhere, like not just for a few minutes in the daytime. I wanted it everywhere, whether that was the sauna, whilst you were going to bed, while you were on public transport. We got you to start doing it as many places as you possibly could. And you're spot on. It didn't happen overnight. And it took practice and repetition and repetition and repetition. We also, during our second session, became aware of other factors that were happening for you, other things that are indicative of your system being in this kind of stress response, this freeze mode. Now, we often hear about fight and flight, but fight, flight, and freeze. Freeze is another presentation of what can happen during stress responses. So this was looking at things like teeth grinding at nighttime, mouth breathing, short and shallow breaths, and your girlfriend gave us some feedback around that as well. Cramping in your feet, arches when massaged. So there were other suggestions that your whole system was wound up here.
Exactly. And I think also I discovered myself that I was kind of unconsciously holding tension in my stomach as well when breathing, or just even moving around. And I think I only discovered that from doing the breath work, the full deep belly breaths, and noticing that, like, oh, I think I'm actually holding a bit of tension in my stomach. I need to try just breathe in deep normally and not try hold in your stomach kind of in this frozen, tight, defensive mode.
Yeah, spot on. And it's not conscious. You're not doing it on purpose, but and this was more why it reinforced the kind of trauma model and trauma theory that we were working with, is because your system it's in freeze mode. It's literally clenching and holding on in fear of things getting worse, of things progressing. And it because it had been such a an ongoing period of the symptoms and then uncertainty within the world. You mentioned kind of job and the factors that were happening for you when you were in Berlin at the time. Um, all of that, um, all of those factors contributed to your system being wound up. Now, your symptoms started to improve, and some of the early changes we saw were about you. Certainly, the urinary symptoms started to change quite noticeably. So you were getting less sudden urgency, no nocturnal urination, which used to be 1 to 2 times. There was an increase in flow, that's urine flow, between the first and second sessions, there was still a dull sensation around the penis and suprapubic area. Ejaculation was the same, but there was some sensations of normal ejaculation starting to happen. I'm just reading off of your notes at the moment. So there was a shift, and that really helps in recovery, doesn't it? It helps to just reinforce that you're doing something right.
Exactly. And like I said to you, I think at the time, I think you asked me, what would be your expectations, or what would you see as progress?
Hmm.
And I still said that anything at that point, because at that point I was so stuck with the same symptoms. I did all the stretching, nothing improving. Looking online on all these forums, trying to find one cure, one person's, anecdote that worked for them. So that's what I was looking for, was just one shift, anything in the body that I could realize. Not even I'm fully cured, but my body is capable of change.
Yeah, that was a very open attitude that I personally believe was really, really instructive in just building that momentum. Um, because it can take quite a lot of effort. I say it's like pushing a car. It can take quite a lot of effort to get the momentum moving, but actually once it is moving, then we can see other change. I progressed your self-care. We looked at how you were standing, whether you were clenching your legs and through your pelvic floor. I gave you more advanced abdominal massages. We progressed you to an even deeper breath, and included some supplements in there as well. And that momentum started to build, didn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Especially the breath work, and then also taking just basic supplements like the magnesium can stop some of the muscle cramps and the jaw kind of clenching during the night. Um, yeah, and I just kept doing mostly the breathing
Mhm.
throughout the day, quite religiously in the morning, in the evening, and slowly but surely everything kind of just let let go. Kind of, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah,
Um, mhm.
yeah. And that was a deeper breath at this point. We were getting you to breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 7. So an even deeper breath. Um, and you know, we then started to see changes again, further changes with urination. Um, uh, Improvements around ejaculation, erections were getting better, more good sensitivity in the penis, less of a rubbery feel, and not having to be as firm with the penis around sexual activity, less inorgasmia, less hard work. It was starting to feel more natural. There was still some testicle retraction, but you were starting to see again just that momentum build, that shift in sensation and symptoms.
Yeah, exactly, and that kind of that even that small shift was encouraging, just for me to keep going with it, and also just to stop worrying. I think I around this point, I think I just stopped worrying, stopped kind of focusing all the time, because I used to during COVID. I used to obsessively think about my symptoms. I couldn't go 1 minute without thinking of, oh, there's a pain there. Why is the pain there? Where's the pain from? How do I fix the pain? This kind of vicious cycle of overthinking. um, about the symptoms constantly, um, which is also a big part of the problem.
Difficult not to though, isn't it? You know, and part of the vicious cycle of this is not only are you feeling different, but you can see changes in your body in an organ that you just don't want to see those changes in, and that reinforces this stress response, this wind up.
Hmm. The wind up, and it's also especially during lockdown and after, the online forums I would look at was sometimes interesting. A lot of it would just kind of exacerbate the symptoms. You would look online, you would think, oh, I'm going to be stuck with this forever. What if it's this? All these theories. There's no one concrete answer. People will be saying, it's not pelvic pain, it's not hard flaccid. You have nerve damage. You need to go to a nerve specialist. And this just puts more anxiety in your head, which translates to more pain and more and questioning what do I have? Why am I feeling this way?
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
mhm.
Yeah, that message of you've got nerve damage, and unfortunately, it's a it's often a bit of a throwaway comment. It's not correct, and we know you don't have nerve damage. But if in times of uncertainty you read that, it's not going to help, is it?
No, not at all. And at one point, I even went to get a um, MRI, yeah, MRI scan. Um, because at one point I was convinced, oh, maybe I have some lower spinal damage, and I went, and of course the scan was fine. There was nothing on it, but you see this, all these uncertainties plus the anxieties of what going on led me to spend money to go get this MRI, and all this time and money kind of wasted on something that was just based upon me hearing someone saying something on an online forum.
But that snowball effect, and I guarantee there'll be so many of the people watching or listening to this now that will have done the same thing just to rule something out, just to make sure that there's nothing going on, that there isn't damage, that I haven't done myself a mischief, that this isn't going to be permanent. Thankfully, more often than not, all of the scans come back negative, but that can also then be leading to more and more uncertainty.
Hmm. Exactly.
So you became very, very good, very adept at working with your breath work, with working on relaxation. You had a really good routine. You were starting to apply for jobs towards the end of our time together. You were really, really instrumental at using different language. That that you didn't have any real expectations, that you were pleased and relieved to see things moving in the right direction. And you started to see a shift and change in your own behavior towards it as well. It was priceless. It was so heartwarming and humbling to watch that you were embodying and literally taking on board and moving further forwards and recognizing, I mean, this was one of your observations, I just need to relax more and to let go. Now, it doesn't mean that anyone with this condition just chill out, right? Just put your feet up a little bit and it will go. It's not quite that simple, is it?
No, I wish it was, but I would say it's more kind of like a whole overview of kind of assessing when the pain started, and like you said, and why. What were the factors? What were the stressors you had at the time that started the symptoms? What are the things that aggravate it? And it's just about reducing those stresses a bit more, and also trying to relax yourself a bit more in turn. And with the balance of those two things at once, I think that's how one can get better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, opening up that possibility, creating that right environment. And how are you now? So it's been nearly a year since we first met. We caught up a couple of times. I've been keeping in contact with you via email. Can you give me an overview as to how you are in terms of pain and in terms of HF symptoms now?
Hmm. I have basically zero HF symptoms. The only thing I have is, I'd say I'm 95% good.
Mhm.
The only sometimes is I notice myself when I'm getting stressed and I'm sitting for an extended amount of time. I can notice that sometimes I get the kind of uh, kind of golf ball feeling in the prostate or the tension under the pelvic floor with a bit of pain. But
Mm.
I'm aware of it now, and I'm also aware of not to dwell on it too much. If I'm aware I'm stressed, I just know, oh, that's just a bit of pain there. Ignore it. Try to do my breathing later. Whereas before, I'd go into the cycle of worrying, stressing, and that's what aggravated. So now I'm aware of um, how to deal with it with the tools you equip me with.
It's really priceless, Ashen. It really, really is. So you're aware in certain situations at certain times that there can be a sensation increasing. You don't panic, you don't freak out about it. You know that there's something you can do later on. So it's not like immediately I need to fix this right now. You're responding to it in a much more calm and settled fashion. Um, it's so heartwarming to hear. So, mate, congratulations. I'm really proud and really pleased of the effort that you put in to get yourself to where you are right now. What would you give as a parting kind of message here? What would you say to anyone who's experiencing HF, pelvic pain, or a combination of both of those?
Two things. Firstly, try not to get dragged into the online forums, or I wasted so much time and energy, and it just left me more stressed looking on Reddit, Discord, all these different online forums for people who are suffering, and I understand they're suffering, but a lot of these forums are very toxic, and they kind of turn into this battle of who has worse symptoms. It's turned into this sympathy game. It's not very productive to actually getting healed. So that'd be the first thing. And the second thing would be is to reach out for help. I think men are bad at this in general. Um, I think it's really important. Men can reach out to explain the feelings they're having, the pain, to people like yourself, um, or other, just to reach out and really to get the help they need.
That's gold. What a lovely and heartwarming message from someone who has been in a really shitty situation, been down that route of going online and finding that as perhaps both helpful in some respects, but more unhelpful, and moving further forwards. And yeah, just knowing that you're not alone and that there is help out there as well. It's absolutely
Hmm.
priceless. Thank you once again, Ushan. And it's great to catch up. It's great to hear where you are now. So thank you once again agreeing for to re-record this. Much
No
appreciated.
problem. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.